Thank you for hopping on. We'll give it a minute or two for people to find their Zoom links, and then we'll get started. Alrighty, we'll get started here. So thank you everyone for hopping on to our Entrepreneurial State of the Union. So we're excited to have you here for the official launch of the Global Entrepreneurship Week 2021 State of the Union. So without further ado, I would like to get us started and would love to have President Nelson say a few words to welcome us to the space, and then we'll get on started. So feel free to start your camera and unmute yourself.
Thanks, Cameron. Before we even get started, I want to thank you for what you've done and what Arlene has done and what the fellows have done to make today actually happen. I'm overwhelmed because a few years ago when we started thinking about this and when we tried the first Global Entrepreneurship Week, we had a couple events and it wasn't much. And today we have the fifth most events in the United States because of what you've done and what we've been able to accomplish here. And that's exciting. Entrepreneurship is at the heart of what Sac State is. It's at the heart of what we're trying to do with the Carlson Center, with the Anchor University, and as well with the anti-racism. We're trying to lift all. I cannot thank enough Gary Mizell for what he did when he made a decision that he was going to commit to global entrepreneurship and to this week. And Western Health Advantage has been a great partner in making that happen. I cannot thank enough Del Carlson for his vision of wanting to give back, wanting to create a new generation of entrepreneurs. And today we will do that. We are here, as we'll be here every November, and we are here so that every college at Sac State can be involved, and everyone is today, because there are entrepreneurs and there are innovators everywhere. And we are dedicated to making sure that that spirit spreads, grows, and is strong forever. The vision's coming true. We're coming out of COVID. We're creating the next job, the next business, the next change in technology. We're creating a better world. And that's because of your spirit. So everyone who is here today, thank you for participating. Thank you for being involved. I look forward to the greatest week we've had, and it's going to be wonderful. And how do I know that? Because even though there are people from Eastern Washington, I've been reading the chat already, I know that Sac State is number one. Stingers up.
Awesome. Thank you, President Nelson, for the welcome, and really excited to be in this space with all of you this evening. So first off, just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Cameron Law, and I have the pleasure to serve as the Executive Director of the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, as well as the Sacramento organizer for Global Entrepreneurship Week. And really thank you for the kind words, President Nelson. And I know Dale would share similar sentiments. He typically Global Entrepreneurship Week comes with the third week of every November, and this year they switched it up on us, even though he had planned his event or his travels a year in advance just to make it for this week. And they actually switched the week on us to the second week of November. So we are excited to be here, though. I wanted to first by thanking our team for all their support and really running this week, as well as all that they do in advancing entrepreneurship throughout the Sacramento region. So I wanted to first highlight Arlene Miranda, who provides our administrative and marketing support. So a lot of the those messages that you saw to get you here today came through her. And then we have Brian Gladden and Jesse Becker-Alexander, who serve as our entrepreneurs and residents that head up a number of the programs that I imagine you've plugged in. And then our three faculty and residents, Dr. Ryan Fuller, Dr. Chang Hong, and Dr. Nathaniel Mills, who are supporting us in navigating and supporting me in building relationships across campus and working with a variety of faculty. And then lastly, just wanted to thank our advisory board members who provide me with strategic support and really help us mobilize this mission and vision of the Carlson Center. And so before I jump into the Carlson Center, just wanted to share, you are joining a truly global week. So we are joining over 180 countries from around the world in this week-long celebration of innovation and entrepreneurship. And our week is filled with a variety of events, everything from the State of the Union to workshops to speed mentoring events. So we're really excited of all that's here to offer. And here at the Carlson Center, we serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education, community, and support to enable startup founders of all backgrounds to explore and launch their businesses. And we're really working towards realizing this vision of making the Sacramento region a premier hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. And it's events and weeks like this here at Global Entrepreneurship Week that I feel like we've really started to step into that, where we are being put on a national scale and demonstrating our ability to connect and support entrepreneurs. And so we're really excited to mobilize that. And, these last couple of years have been challenging. We're still here in a virtual Global Entrepreneurship Week. But for me, we've really built community here in the Sacramento region and through the Carlson Center. And I'm excited to be working along the continuum of with entrepreneurs at idea stage to those that are scaling with capital and really starting to mobilize that community. And it's been fun to be back in the space. So I'm here today at the Carlson Center, and we have some students out in the space, which is awesome. But it's really great for that community to be mobilized here on campus. And I just want to, before we hop into the keynote presentation with Faye, I also just wanted to really point out that I truly feel there's something special going on in the Sacramento entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I think we're at this key inflection point where if we continue to partner and collaborate, which we've been doing for the last few years, that I truly believe we are going to be working towards having Sacramento as that premier hub of innovation and entrepreneurship, and really going to be mobilizing our community. So we really thank you for being here. And now I'm going to transition over to our keynote presentation. So just wanted to provide a little bit of context for this conversation. So before I introduced Faye Horowitz, who's the president and CEO of Forward Cities, who's our keynote speaker here today for the State of the Union. Part of the reason why we asked Faye to be our keynote speaker was one, we've started to mobilize this conversation in the Sacramento entrepreneurial ecosystem around this E3 framework, which she's going to go into, which is around equity for every entrepreneur. And we found that this was really key to us mobilizing our mission at the Carlson Center to make innovation and entrepreneurship pervasive throughout the greater Sacramento region. And we felt like this conversation was really key to building on the conversation we had this time last year with Ian Hathaway. Ian Hathaway, who co-authored Startup Community Way, really provided us some language and some constructs to really think about this idea of ecosystem building, that entrepreneurs don't just go about it and do it alone, that they really need this support mechanism to help them get from that idea to raising capital to ultimately being a big success. And so our goal here is to further educate our community and connect all of you with national resources around ecosystem building and how we can better support our entrepreneurs. And so I'm really excited to have Faye Horowitz from Forward Cities to come share her experience and expertise in building equitable entrepreneurial ecosystems. And we're really excited to have them as a collaborative partner. And go ahead and I'll turn it over to you, Faye. We're really excited to have you here and appreciate you spending the time with us here in Sacramento.
Thank you so much, Cameron. It's fantastic to be with you, and want to thank Sacramento State and the Carlson Center for the invitation to come and share with you all today. I've been watching all of the excitement and the social media around your Global Entrepreneurship Week, and I don't think I've seen any city that is sort of like going this big. So congratulations to all the energy and all the excitement and everyone that's put in work this weekend to making these events happen. And excited to sort of jump in and have a conversation with you all today. Today we're going to talk about what Cameron described as the E3 approach, and this is the work that Forward Cities has been doing in prioritizing, catalyzing equity for every entrepreneur. So, that's a lot of words, but it's E3 for short, equity for every entrepreneur. Today, we're going to talk about what that looks like and can look like in Sacramento. Just to give you a little sense of who we are, my name is Faye, as Cameron shared. I'm the president and CEO of an organization called Forward Cities. We're founded in 2014, and we work around the country helping communities like Sacramento and regions to grow and sustain more equitable entrepreneurial ecosystems or communities. We work in across the country, and our vision really is something it's fundamental, we believe, to sort of humanity. And that is that every entrepreneur would have an equitable opportunity and access to develop, launch, and grow a business that creates wealth for themselves, their family, and or their community. And that means every entrepreneur. So we are working in various communities around the country and have over the past 5 or 6 years. Our work is funded by several communities, but also several large funders across the country on a national level. We are excited to have just gotten the SBA a Small Business Navigator grant for Durham from the SBA. We are funded by JP Chase as well to do capital ecosystem work in the Indianapolis ecosystem. And our largest funder is the Kauffman Foundation. And they have, over three years ago, they engaged Forward Cities to help them codify and to formalize best practices and share those around ecosystem building across the country. And we're doing that and testing these processes in 4 communities: Long Beach, Baltimore, Central New Mexico, and Kansas City. So I I would love to. You've known now a little bit about me and Forward Cities. I always like to know who I'm in a room with. And even though I'm not there physically in the room, we're having a conversation together. And I'd love for you to be able to engage with me and vice versa throughout our conversation. So if you go to menti.com on your mobile device or on your laptop or your desktop, and then enter in the code you see on the screen there, 8719870. And that way we can have a bit of a conversation today, and this won't be just one-sided. So the first thing I'd like to ask you there, you'll see the first question pop up, is what is your role in the Sacramento entrepreneurial ecosystem in the community? Who are you? I know that one of the things I love about Global Entrepreneurship Week is that it brings together folks from across the community who care about entrepreneurs and care about entrepreneurship. But just curious to see, in the room today, who we've got. I know a lot of people fill multiple roles, but would love to see which one you most resonate with. Looks like we've got a lot of support organizations and entrepreneurs in the room. I love that. I love it. That's fantastic. I love that there's so many entrepreneurs. And you can continue to put that in. We've got also, looks like some entrepreneurial champions. That number's going. It's great to see. Fantastic. And I know some of you are also probably serving in the role of mentor and advisor, but fantastic to see such a mix of folks in the room. So we'd love to ask you along with that, when you think about the work that you do in your entrepreneurial community, what's your why? Why do you show up every day? Why do you come to events like this? Why do you lean in and support entrepreneurs and business owners in your community? For me, this is where I started, actually. My work started in local community supporting entrepreneurs as an ecosystem builder. Looks like we've got, it's fun. Can't go much better than that. It's all about the students. Entrepreneurs are the backbone of the economy, passionate about helping entrepreneurs. Fantastic. Committing to changing the game. I love it. I love it. Looks like folks, all coming to this work with different sort of perspectives, but in the end, everyone wants to support the entrepreneurs in their community. And because we know that entrepreneurship is a means, and innovation is a means towards changing the world. And that is what we see, what Forward City sees across the country as we do this work. And so thank you all for pouring in and supporting entrepreneurs in your community and helping be a part of making change. So as we jump in, I know, you heard me say, you've heard it a couple of times probably already this week, this term entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I know that 5-6 years ago, I didn't know what this term meant. And I know a lot of folks out there may not know, and it may be new to some people. And so I'll just like dig in a little bit on this and not skip over it. I think it's really important. I have come to describe this work in various ways, and you'll hear people talk about it in comparison to a natural ecosystem, on all of the things, animals, plants, air that go into supporting a nature ecosystem. I've also heard it described, and I've described it as community organizing for businesses, right? How do you connect the dots and get the relationships that entrepreneurs need to thrive and survive? And then most recently, someone said something to me and compared it to something that I had never even thought about. And I want to sort of toss that out there for you all today and see what you think. First question would be, who loves airports? Put in the chat, think about it. Are you, when you go to the airport, what comes to mind? You have to head out of town. What comes to mind when you think about going to an airport? And you can go ahead and put that in chat. Someone says, not me, I do not love it. Oh, adventure, airports, ugh, okay. Getting a private jet, yes, all right. Think about vacation. All kinds of things come to mind. Vacation on one side, stress on the other side, right? We will be late, the wait time, all of these things, some great and positive, some sort of a little scary, but when you think about it, airports are a microcosm. They're a place where everyone who goes there has somewhere that they are wanting to go. They are at a starting point, they have a desire, they have some purpose, and their entire purpose for coming to an airport is to get to their final destination, right? So if you think about airports like entrepreneurial ecosystems, right? And the passengers are the entrepreneurs. Every entrepreneur that comes to the ecosystem or comes into your community has a goal, has a dream of somewhere they're looking to get to with their business. Everyone is different. Everyone has a different purpose. Everyone's going at a different pace and it's going to land somewhere different. But in order to get there, they have to come to this place. And everything is designed in that place to help them get from where they are to where they want to be. And there's a science to airport design. A lot of people don't realize this, but when you're walking through an airport, even when you get into the car headed into the airport area, you immediately begin to see things shift and change. You immediately begin to see signage that starts to point you in one direction or another in your car. What gate, or are you going to departures? Are you going to arrivals? Are you going to parking? And the further you get in, the more and more you start to find out, okay, I'm weaving my way to where I want to be. You get to, curbside and you go, oh, this is my airline. And the signs point you again to where you want to go, where you headed. And everything in the airport and every person in that airport is designed to help you. They all have different roles, right? You've got sky cabs, you've got customer service, you got people who are ticketing, you got people who are working in restaurants, people who are working at the gate, people who are loading your luggage. That is an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And airports are supposed to be designed for seamless flow. And that means ideally, they're designed so that you can get from curbside to your plane without any friction, without any issues and challenges. But we all know, right, that is not the way it goes. We all know that depending on, what your status is and how you're flying, hey, your first class or your TSA pre-check, you have certain privileges that let you get to where you want to go faster, with less friction, with less hassles. And that is the way often our ecosystems are designed. And then we've got other folks that have more challenges getting there and they have to wait longer in line. And then you think about people who have to fly standby. And this is what I think about most when I think about equity and entrepreneurship, is that there's people that even though they paid for a ticket and they showed up at the airport and they packed their bag and they did everything that everybody else does, they get to the gate, they're there, and they still can't get on that flight. And they may never end up where they dream of going because of the different types of access that are available for different folks. Now, on the flip side of that, when you think about equity, and I just experienced this today, I was flying back into Raleigh-Durham, and I was on a flight where there were 7 passengers that had wheelchairs. And someone made sure, and there was a design that made sure that they were able to get to the gate and onto the flight with special accommodations, because they had special needs. They were in a circumstance that disadvantaged them. And so, which meant that they had to have compensatory services to make sure they got to where they were going. So this is what we think about when we think about, equity and entrepreneurship, and when we think about ecosystems. Does that analogy resonate with folks? What about it just stands out to you? And think about this next time you're sort of supporting entrepreneurs, and think about what that looks like. So with that in mind, when we think about your ecosystem as an airport, often, if you go back to when we were kids, what does it mean to navigate this airport well? How do you design something for seamless flow? What does it look like to make something a good ecosystem, to build a good ecosystem? When we were kids, we used to think about, our teachers would encourage us to think about the what, when, why, where, how questions, and that's what we want to lean into today. So how, when, and who, and why of entrepreneurial ecosystems? And we're going to start with the when, because that is crucial to the timing of where we sit in America right now. We know that a lot has changed over the past few years, particularly over the last year and a half. Our nation and communities are facing a triple threat. We know COVID-19, the pandemic, has upended our economy and our communities. We know that there has been a significant racial injustice awakening. So a lot of folks over the past year didn't really quite understand some of the inequities that happen related to race, or waking up to these things and wanting to do something about it. And at an unprecedented rate, people are figuring out and navigating, okay, what does that look like and how do we do better? And third, we've got a time when there's like heightened political unrest, which means there's a lot of people talking past each other. There's a lot of people not really understanding and listening and hearing. But one of the things you will find, and one of the things that we're optimistic about, is that everyone agrees that entrepreneurship, regardless if you're on the left or right or anywhere in between, that we need to boost the economy, and entrepreneurship is a way to do that. And everyone agrees in that. So what does it look like to address these things, right, in this time? This win that we are sitting in is very unique. And so when you think about the next question, where does this happen, right? Where are we doing this? And for you specifically, you are in the Sacramento ecosystem very tangibly and geographically, but where do you want to go from here? What does that look like? In a time of economic uncertainty and a time when the pandemic is waning but ever present, we have to face some facts. And that is, there's no magic bullet for any of these things that we are going through. We're not going to wake up tomorrow and suddenly have all the answers and the pandemic be gone, and the economy be back to normal. So we have to kind of sit with, okay, this is where we are right now, but where do we want to go? And there are only two places. We can either go back to status quo. Who votes for that? We want to go back to where we are. I don't think most people want to go back to where we were. It may have been good for some folks, but it was not good for most of us. So it's either going back or we go forward, and we go forward to something better. And so you're hearing a lot of language around different programs and different initiatives now around better, right? Rebuild better. How do we build back better? Coming back and doing something better. This is probably the buzzword right now, is better. So how do we do that? What does better look like, right? And that's what I want to lean into and ask you all today, as you think about, if you think about this, why do we need to be better? What was wrong with the way things were? What's wrong with the status quo? So you need to know that in order to know what's the better you're going to. So what does better actually look like in Sacramento? I would love to hear you all share with me and with each other. What are 3 words to best describe what a better Sacramento ecosystem looks like for you? What does it feel like? What do you see? What is sort of the feeling? Fantastic. Corporate, fun, it's responsible, it's accessible, it's friendly, it's social. And again, we're going back to many.com. If you pull that up, we're going to keep going there throughout our conversation. It's responsible, interconnected. We're supporting entrepreneurs. It's collaborative and expanding. Fantastic. Thriving, I love that word. And equitable, most definitely. More pro-business. It's connected. You're seeing a few words bubble up to the surface here. Collaborative and interconnected. Fantastic, I love it. Keep putting in words. We'll share this. I'll share this out with you all later. I think it's really great for you to be able to see what your community believes and wants for the future of your ecosystem. So how do you build a collaborative, more accessible and interconnected ecosystem in Sacramento? Well, Forward Cities believes that the first step towards that is making sure that it's equitable. And in order to do that, you have to think about where we're coming from. And a colleague of mine shared this quote with me a year and a half ago as we were sort of developing a curriculum for anti-racism for ecosystems. And she said, history doesn't repeat itself. Systems do. And it really resonated with me because I began to think about once upon a time, I thought, there's something wrong with my ecosystem. There's something wrong that there's so many inequities. It's broken. And I thought, okay, how do I fix this broken system? And over time, the more I sort of leaned in, the more I learned, what I realized is that it really isn't broken. It's actually designed very well to advantage those that it was designed to advantage. And so the way our economy is built and the way it was designed at a time when people of color were not seen as equals. And that meant that it was uniquely created to make sure that those that were in power stayed in power, and that those that they wanted to never have that power would never have access to it. And so when we think about how do we build better, how do we get better, then we have to think about, rather than trying to fix broken systems, how do we design new systems? How do we create new ecosystems that have equity for all in their DNA? And a few of those things to think about. You have to understand what is there that's creating that flow, that seamless flow in the airport from being a reality. And there are three categories that we believe and that we've seen in the patterns that show up in ecosystems that are a detriment, and that really, from a racism standpoint, create the inequities. One is the bias. And this refers to the systemic deviation from national thought when people choose actions, right? So the fact that we know that women of color and Black women receive less than 1% of venture capital. It has nothing to do with their ability to do the job. In fact, the stats show that they actually overperform. And so that bias is not rational, but yet it creates a huge systemic issue for Black women and for women of color. Two, barriers, obstacles, whether they be emotional, cultural, financial, physical, or educational, otherwise, that prohibit movement and access. And these are the things that you'll see throughout your ecosystem, and that folks like me, that look like me, experience on a daily basis. And those of you that may not look like us may not see it. It may not be visible on the surface. But these are the things that you'll see people, if you really listen, experiencing every day, particularly if they are women, if you're talking about people who happen to have Black or brown skin, or immigrants. And then the last is bureaucracy. Processes, systems, and practices that create requirements and strict order or inflexible rules in order to complete a task. And what you see, we saw this very much so in last year's first stimulus package. You saw that the people and the businesses that most needed the money, by the time they found out that the help was available, by the time they navigated their way through a banking system that they didn't understand, and filled out all the forms and tried to find all the resources and the documentation, the money was already gone. And it had gone to types of businesses and types of folks that really didn't need it. And the government did see this, and they corrected for it in this last two stimulus packages. But that bureaucracy is what created amazing and intense inequities on top of those that already existed last year. So these are three categories of things you should keep in mind when you're talking about building equity in ecosystems. And Ford Cities has developed a curriculum and an anti-racism framework called Abide for entrepreneurial ecosystems. And I would challenge you and ask you, as you're thinking about your role in your local ecosystem, to ask yourself these questions, whether you are a support organization or you're an entrepreneur that is like trying to get opportunities with support organizations or with funders or investors? What are you experiencing? We think about access. Is the opportunity reasonably within reach for every person? That means time of day that is offered, the location, is there free transportation available? Is there childcare? Is it offered on a day of the week that makes sense for people who may have day jobs? We think about belonging. Does your opportunity or program resonate with a variety of cultures and lifestyles? And in this one, it's really important too to think about that it's not that everyone has to come to you. Sometimes it's okay if there are affinity programs or affinity spaces for women or for people of color or specifically for Black entrepreneurs, because that's where they can thrive best because they have a sense of belonging. And those programs and those opportunities should be equitably funded and supported. Next, we talk about inclusion. Are there multiple perspectives integrated in the leadership, design, implementation, and promotion of programs? That means that it's not just about who you serve, but who is serving and how you are serving. Inclusion is included in all of that. And then diversity. Is there an intentional openness and outreach to all? And that includes, this is not just about putting up pictures of folks on your website that are of various races. This is not what this means. It means going beyond that. It means an intentionality around how you are making outreach, to whom, in what spaces, in what places, and in what language you are using. Equity, lastly. Are there compensatory considerations to address historical and systemic oppression? And what this means is that it's not just enough to have equality. It's not just that you want to have the same. It is, we now have to make up for the fact that there has been historical and systemic oppression. And colonization has created an environment where some folks are already way behind. So in order to do that, you have to have compensatory programming, funding. You have to be able to say, for instance, as a support organization that may be institutional, hey, rather than us applying for that grant to do an equity program or a program for minorities, we're going to actually support a grassroots organization that's been serving those communities successfully for years, right, or for decades, but hasn't had the resources to do that well. So we're going to help them build their capacity. We're going to serve a fiscal sponsor. We're going to sponsor their programming rather than trying to create our own. That's an example of how you can lean into equity from a financial perspective. And then lastly, how does the pandemic and its effects exacerbate existing biases, barriers, and bureaucracy, and how can you counteract those? So this is a framework that Forward Cities offers to train local communities in, but it's also, you can take these questions and just ask them of yourselves and your leadership and your ecosystem on your own. So hopefully that's something helpful that you can support your local ecosystem in as well, and hold them accountable. Lastly, one of the things we think about is how. So we've talked about, we know when we're doing this, we know where we want to be headed, what better looks like. We know why it's important and why it's necessary, particularly to lean into equity. And we want to think about, okay, how are we going to do this? We know we want to do better, but what is it going to take? And what specifically can we do? And so Forward Cities thinks about these ecosystem building skills that are very important for any ecosystem to lean into, no matter what your role. We find that every activity of ecosystem building fits into one of these categories. One is assessment. You have to conduct qualitative, quantitative, and perception-based research to map the existence and efficacy of the resources in your ecosystem. Alignment. You have to convene leaders to sense make around that data, to define roles, to align their efforts, to collaborate. Collaboration was one of the big words that popped up, to identify shared outcomes and commit to improving them together. And then you can't just sit and talk. You can't just sit and plan. You actually have to move that into action. And that means translating your common vision into actionable goals and deliverables. that lead to a seamless and equitable flow of resources in your ecosystem. That means creating new programs, collaborating together on programs, finding out what you might do new to serve or meet a gap in the ecosystem, but actually putting something into action. Advocacy. That means that you're pushing for better policies and practices across systems. And that means advocating to government, advocating for better funding for ecosystem supports, and then lastly, amplification. Telling the stories of entrepreneurs, equippers, and the ecosystem across the community to grow support for the ongoing work. These 5 things you can all lean into together to create better for the Sacramento ecosystem. Oh, I love it when you think about these things. Love to see you share and share with one another so you get a sense of where you are. When you think about these ecosystem building skills, which do you believe is the strongest? So we're going to rank these, with 1 being the strongest in your ecosystem. What does that look like for you? Where do you think you're strong? Where do you think you may need to sort of lean in and to grow a little as an ecosystem? Let's see what folks have to say. And again, we're going back to many.com. Hopefully you can jump in here. This is a bit of a deeper question, so it might take a bit. There we go. All right. All right, looks like advocacy's coming in strong. Well, we got a few people, we got 5 folks answering. Let's see give this just a little bit and see where it heads. Advocacy, okay. It feels like a lot of folks are seeing that you are advocating well, that government relationships and conversations around entrepreneurship, and probably also some funding is happening. That's great. That tends to be actually one of the lowest, so it's great to see. You've got assessment, all right, so you're understanding maybe better what your data looks like, but they're all pretty much even, so that's good. It means that there's everyone's recognizing a need for all these things, which is great. And we'll continue to sort of share a little bit, and we can come back to this at the end. So when we think about, lastly, we'll want to lean into and think about the what. And this is about really realistically thinking about what are you measuring at better. It can be said that if it's not worth measuring, it's not worth doing. Or if it's worth doing, it's worth measuring, right? And so Forward Cities, and we've been excited to partner with the Carlson Center and Cameron on the development and an assessment tool for the Sacramento ecosystem that Forward Cities has developed, called our E3 scorecard. And this was designed because we realized that you can't see everything in an ecosystem to measure it. A lot of people think about measuring ecosystems in terms of revenue or jobs, number of programs, number of accelerators. But what's beyond that? How do you measure what's invisible, the trust and connectivity? How do you measure the culture and how equitable it is? How do you measure the efficacy and quality of programs and service delivery? And so we created a scorecard that does that, combines this idea of community data with community engagement. And we encourage communities to take the scorecard and rank all of these elements across 8 categories and 4 subcategories to understand how healthy and equitable the ecosystem is. And that's in the process now. It measures the people, programs, networks, and narratives across the ecosystem, how healthy and equitable they are. And you see all these elements here on the right. These are some of the categories that we dive into to sort of lean in and learn. And you'll learn more about that later this week with our team. But this is just an example here in the people category. You'll see it talks about, hey, you want to have diverse entrepreneurs, you want to have a K through 12 pipeline, you want to have college and entrepreneurship programs dedicated to this, multilingual mentors, and workforce development strategies. So this gives you a sample of the kind of elements that are in the scorecard and how we fold in equity to the very DNA of measuring an ecosystem. And then we share out with communities a sample report. And lastly, we'll talk about the who. And this is the most important thing, right? Who is responsible for investing in your ecosystem? Who should be investing in Sacramento's entrepreneurial ecosystem? And this is where Forward Cities comes in and where we help communities. We come and we like to show up and help inspire folks to want to dig in and serve more and better in their ecosystem. We also will that services and help communities do this if they don't have the capacity themselves. And we're building a community of practice of folks like you across the country to share best practices with one another and to grow. But most importantly is your community. Who needs to invest in Sacramento ecosystem? They're every one of you. And if you know someone in your community that is not supporting entrepreneurs actively, there's something they all can do. From being an entrepreneur and giving their intellectual capital to a consumer who can buy local and support local entrepreneurs. We talk about the knowledge capital of folks that are service providers and organizations to support entrepreneurs. We talk about how corporations can get involved and how they can sponsor entrepreneurial events and entrepreneurial training. We talk about the political capital. What does that look like for advocate for entrepreneur-friendly policies? Obviously, the investment capital that flows through, and how can banks get more engaged? From an anchor institutional perspective, we also talk about our universities like Sacramento State. We think about real estate, the social capital of mentors and champions, and we believe also that what actually is needed most right now on this ecosystem layer is philanthropic capital. Because what we understand is that ecosystems by their nature are relational. They're about how do you improve the social fabric of your community so you can better serve entrepreneurs. And then from an equity perspective, it's about building wealth generation in communities for BIPOC entrepreneurs that are not traditionally exposed to those opportunities. And so we believe that that philanthropic capital could be catalytic for being able to better invest in communities, to better invest in entrepreneurial ecosystems. So that said, I would like to invite you all to think about what is your role personally in investing in your ecosystem. And what's one thing that you can think of that you can do to invest in your local ecosystem in the next 30 days based on who you are. And spotted there that Laura and Cameron are sharing about taking the survey. So we'd love to have you do that as well. As many folks as possible. Mentor entrepreneurs, love it. Who else? Who's gonna take a leap and invest in the next 30 days? What are you gonna invest? See if we can get a few more folks jumping in here. Beginning my prototype pilot. Yes, we got some intellectual capital flowing. I love it. Champion and help as many entrepreneurs as possible. Hosting events. I love it. All kinds of different, obviously, different folks here in different roles. Connect entrepreneurs to resources, to education and capital. Buy local. Yes, I love it. Continue to serve on the board. Board leadership, very important as well. So keep thinking about these things. I encourage you to really go home and sit with it for a bit and see what is it that you can do that's a little bit more different or beyond what you may think to support local entrepreneurs in your community. That is the airport. So thank you so much. We'd love to answer any questions or happy to dig into the conversation with Cameron to share more.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the rundown. So much good content. I love the focus. I love the analogy around the airport. I think that's definitely one that really resonated with our variety of the ecosystem builders that I saw, just echoing that. So I'm going to do a quick spotlight of you and me here for our little fireside chat. So we'll transition to the fireside chat portion, and then we'll hop into the lightning talks after that. So one, just wanted to echo again, thank you for the presentation. Just so much good language to add to our toolkit as we start to have these conversations. I love the ABIDE framework, and I'm not sure if you're familiar, but the Sacramento State University, we through the president has pushed an anti-racist initiative plan on campus. And I think that framework could be certainly one, if we're not already starting to apply, one that we can continue to put in place here. And then lastly, just that the quote, history doesn't repeat itself, systems do. And so how can we better build that system, one that's more equitable and one that fosters entrepreneurship for everyone. So I'm excited to dig in a little bit deeper. So I have some guiding questions for us, but just really wanted to have a dialogue here. But so jumping in, so one of the things that when I look at the role of kind of building and fostering an ecosystem, it's sometimes, as you shared, it's a hard thing to grasp. And I think the analogy around the airport is one that kind of helps people to visualize that. But how do you get more people to start to see themselves as some of those champions around the entrepreneurial ecosystem building, and maybe not necessarily like, you know, running 1 million cups or things like that, but starting to engage that ecosystem? Because sometimes it can seem like, oh, that's not for me. I can tell you one time I'm wearing a suit jacket, and it's like, oh, well, entrepreneurs and the people in that community don't wear suits. And so I was like, oh, you know, is it not for me? Even though it was something that I was really drawn to. So I'm kind of curious of how you can get more people engaged in that work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to do with, again, that's why I ask people about their why. If you understand, you know, what drives people, and it's why I will ask that question of people when I meet them often, is if you understand their why, then you can understand how to sort of tap into what they're after to help you get what you're after, right? So, you know, if you know, for instance, that someone maybe has always wanted to start a business, but they never felt like they could. They never felt like that they, you know, could take time away from work, and they just have this itch, right? So those are folks that are but they may have a skill, like a corporate skill. They're really good at accounting. Okay, well, you know what? Hey, come mentor. Come, you know, provide, be an accounting advisor for an entrepreneur. And that's how you get people engaged, because they're going to do it. People are selfish. I'm just going to say this. People are going to do something that feels good to them. And it's not like selfish in a bad way, but they have a reason that they show up, or that they spend time, or they invest money, time, or energy, or resources. And if you can tap into what that is, then you're gold.
And it's kind of, I guess, eating what we teach the entrepreneurs, finding your value proposition and bringing them on board and seeing their why to engaging in the work. And I think this next question is a good follow-up on like the why. And so one of the things that, you know, when we're looking at kind of economic development as a whole, a lot of times we focus on that business retention, growth, and attraction, which are core assets to certainly growing an economy. But sometimes the entrepreneurial aspect and kind of the new business creation gets lost, because it's sometimes hard to see the direct impact, right? As a startup, you know, their impact to creating jobs might be 5 to 7 years from when you first interact with them. And so have you seen entrepreneurship as a driver for economic development? And what are some of the maybe communities or cases where you've seen this really come to fruition, and something that you've looked at as kind of a model?
Well, you know, I think it's important to think about timing and time horizons when you ask when you're thinking about a question like this, because a lot of folks who are thinking about whether or not ecosystem building is a worthwhile investment, right? They're thinking about, okay, how can I immediately see these numbers jump? How can I immediately see the number of jobs shift and change? And that is not going to be immediate. You're not going to be able to measure that quickly. And so, you know, what the field of ecosystem building and entrepreneurial support has been leaning into is how do we develop interim metrics? How do we think about what are short and medium term metrics that we can lean into and understand to help folks see the progression, right? So because it's going to take years, it's going to take decades to see that long-term impact. What's most important is if we think about now two things. How can we track back? So if you think about any ecosystem that you know is successful, where entrepreneurship is thriving, go back and look at their history and see the threads that led them there. What was planted, what seeds were planted along the way that got them there? And I guarantee you, when you look back, you will see, things like Global Entrepreneurship Week. You will see things like, a co-working space opened, 10 years ago, or, there were a local entrepreneur that got successful, invested back in his ecosystem. And that's sort of the way of, I believe, being able to tell those stories. Now, Kauffman Foundation is working on some of those stories. What does that look like to look back? But also, as we look forward, how can we think about measuring, for instance, the increase in entrepreneurs that go through an SBA on a given year, the increase in the number of folks that are showing up at entrepreneurial events like this. Those are the kinds of early indicators that we believe, if we can begin to measure them more effectively, can point towards a more successful case for ecosystem building as economic development.
I love it. So yeah, so the keys there for me were looking at kind of the timing and the time horizons in which we're looking at this particular work. And it makes me think of from Startup Community Way as, 20 years from today. And it's always this timeline that's looking forward for sure. And finding those intermediate metrics to really see the progression and tell the story, which I know is probably part of the narratives component of the framework for sure. And then you mentioned just, starting kind of like different co-working spaces. Maybe it's the Global Entrepreneurship Week. I did want to give a shout out to some of our co-working spaces that are doing a live viewing of this. So we have Cap City and Studio Co-working. So we appreciate them. And maybe this will be the catalyst for some of their entrepreneurs. So I just wanted to echo that. And so I just have two last questions. So building on this last question, as I was kind of looking through, I came across a blog article that you authored with Shayla Herndon Edmonds, who you mentioned earlier, and it tied to Victor Wang's Right to Start movement. And it stated, entrepreneurship at this unprecedented crossroads is a vehicle with the potential to disrupt our current national stalemate and propel us down the right and righteous road toward the actualization of true equity. Was wondering if you could dive a little bit deeper into this and really through building equity for every entrepreneur, how can we start to unlock this vehicle for change?
Man, when you read back my post to me, I actually sound a little profound.
I'll send it your way.
I guess I did say that. So thank you for bringing that up to the forefront for me again. And it's very, very poignant. Victor talks about this idea that entrepreneurship is a human right. And I believe that just resonated so deeply with me when he first shared it with me. And if you think about it that way, we all are innately creators. We all have the ability to be creative, and we all have ideas every day. And it's a mindset shift for a lot of folks to move out of seeing ourselves as consumers to ideators and creators. And if we can lean into that for ourselves, but more importantly, if we can unlock that potential in everyone, particularly folks who have, if you think about this, we think about products. We think about how we build a lean startup canvas around a product. Slaves were products. We're living in a society with people where someone like me was considered a product. I was a commodity, and here we are. We have to, that huge gap of how do you move people from being products to being the creator of products. No one else in this country besides Black people have ever had to experience that. And it is a very profound and deep, it's very hard to explain if you don't have that heritage and you don't have that lived experience. But the reality is that the fact that we're still here and we are starting businesses and we are running businesses, the fact we're still here at all points to the resiliency of Blacks in America. And if we're now at this crossroads of being able to like really understand and dig deep into how we got here and be willing to tell some truths to each other, to heal and to create better systems, there's nothing that we can't accomplish together, right? There's nothing that people of color can't accomplish. There's nothing that allies can't accomplish, but it's going to take us all being willing to step outside of our comfort zones and do some new things.
I love it. Love it. All righty. The last question I have here is, so the next part of our kind of session here tonight is going to be the lightning talks, which is really a regional perspective of the E3 framework that you talked about earlier. So looking at those essential building blocks of being the people, programs, networks, and narratives. And so would love if you could share any maybe additional context you'd like to have around kind of those, how to build those foundations and really looking at building that invisible infrastructure to support entrepreneurs. One of our ecosystem builders uses the quote, it started with no one builds a great company alone, and then it started to go into nobody builds a great ecosystem alone. And so would love to, if there's any additional context you'd like to share around kind of building that invisible infrastructure of people, programs, networks, and narratives as we start to transition to the lightning talks.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm so grateful to see this framework coming to life in Sacramento, which is beautiful. I would say, I just encourage folks to, as your guests are sharing through the lightning talks, think about where you sit in in your positionality in your ecosystem and where you might be able to have the most influence. Which of those areas can you sort of step up into sort of and take some agency and ownership of in your ecosystem and be a champion for one particular area? Not everybody's going to be able to do everything. So it's not meant to make you feel overwhelmed. It's meant for you to sort of see yourself and where you might be able to lean in and really make a difference as one person alongside all the other one persons that create the system.
Love that. And it makes me go back to that visual representation that we all have, some sort of role to play no matter where we sit in that ecosystem. So I love that. Well, with that, I wanted to say thank you, Faye, for joining us here in Sacramento and sharing more about the E3 framework and just so much great content to help us build an equitable innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we're really appreciative to have Forward Cities as a partner and to advance the E3 framework here. And we've enjoyed learning from you and your team as well throughout this process. So wanted to say thank you again, and thank you on behalf of Sacramento and Global Entrepreneurship Week here. So thank you, Faye.
Thanks, Cameron. It's been great being with you.
All righty. Well, we'll transition now to our lightning talks portion. So I'll ask my friend Monique Brown to turn her video on, and I will spotlight her. And awesome. Well, we'll get started here. So Monique will be our facilitator through the lightning talks conversation portion. So we have 4 core lightning talks. We'll have Barry Broom sharing about our narratives, and then we'll have Don McGee talking about the people aspect, and then we have Laura Good talking about the programs, and then Amanda Blackwood talking about our networks. And so I'll turn it over to you, Monique, and appreciate you being here to facilitate. Monique is the co-founder and managing director of the Growth Factory and is a partner of the Growth Factory Ventures, and is a longtime ecosystem builder in the Sacramento region, and obviously, most importantly, a friend of mine. So I'll turn it over to her, who will facilitate us throughout the rest of the session.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And Faye, wow, I can't really say enough about the presentation that you just gave us and the thought-provoking kind of questions. But what I like most about it is just how actionable it is. And so as we think about like moving the E3 framework into the Sacramento region, and as we dive into each one of these different kind of categories that have been defined in the E3 scorecard, I was thinking about, where are we at today? We started to take that assessment, and I saw that Laura and Jeff put a link into the chat, so I hope everybody else will take a minute to fill it out as well. But what is obvious is I think we have a lot of the ingredients, and with Faye's contribution tonight and her work with the E3 scorecard, I think we might have the beginnings of a framework. So I guess the question is, do we have the will to make it happen? And do we have the leaders? And can we build a community with grit, who won't quit, who will figure it out, who will ask the hard questions and look within each one of ourselves and then reach out, be authentic, work hard, work together, innovate, and change? Do we have that here in our community? And I think the answer is, after this call, yes, and after this week, yes, we do. I believe we do. With the leadership of people like Cameron here at the Carlson Center and Jeff and Laura's tireless work at Startup Sac, and many of the speakers we're going to hear from as we move forward, I believe we do. But it is going to take everybody stepping up in some small way, as Faye explained. So as we move into these different sections, I want to encourage us to think about or maybe to not allow equity for every entrepreneur, E3, not allow it to be a soundbite. Lights went out. Sorry, hold on. There we go. But to really use it as the highly actionable value system and a commitment to design forward and create a better way to build a rich and diverse kind of fabric of our entrepreneurial community together, across the categories that Faye described: people, programs, networks, and narratives, across sectors, public, private, nonprofit, and across our communities from Del Paso Heights to Rancho to Davis to Folsom, Rockland, Roseville, Woodlands, right? Reaching into the urban core, reaching out to our rural communities. So I think it's starting to happen. I think this week is a great example of those leading indicators of events that are rich in diverse topics and covering a lot of different things. And I'm really excited to hear from our next speakers, starting with the phenomenal Barry Broom, who in the E3 kind of scorecard framework, narratives is the last thing. And when we talked to Nick earlier this week, he said, well, you kind of need, we see that as being kind of at the end of the list, because you kind of need the people, programs, and network to start telling the story about. But Barry Broom is, he's an absolute genius when it comes to setting a vision, creating a compelling narrative, and then making it happen, right? Willing it into reality. So I'm excited to hear what he has to say, and I'll hand it over to him.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. I think, one of the things we have to do with our narrative is just embrace it. I think the biggest challenge we have in Sacramento is almost the opinion we have of ourselves. And, I think being next to Silicon Valley, I've always felt like being next to Silicon Valley be like if your, big brother went into the NFL and was, a 4-time MVP, but maybe you were just a really good college football player. And I think the things that we have going on here, I was looking at some of the examples like Zenify, Rhombus Systems, Trifecta, Origin Materials, Power School, which just did an IPO, is the largest academic technology company in America. It's built from the ground up here in Folsom. So to me, a lot of the narrative is, we first off, we have to learn more about ourselves. I mean, how many people in our community know there's only 10 universities in America that do $1 billion in research, and one of them's here, and it's called UC Davis. Do we even know how powerful our own set of assets are? And I really think, one of the things, having led communities all my life, how do you get your community to throw their shoulders back and lift their chin up, right? And I think that's really what we have to do next. Of course, we're one of the top 5 or 6 science centers in America. We really are. I mean, #1 in the world in food and ag. Now you have Aggie Square with cell therapies. And yet, I think we're still trying to learn how to embrace our own exceptionalism. And I think we've allowed being near Silicon Valley almost quiet our own success. And I'll give you a great example is Research Triangle Park, which is talked about all over the country as this great center of science and excellence. And we did a side-by-side, and we're dramatically more dynamic than Research Triangle Park. We don't have a friendly government by North Carolina, but we're dramatically more dynamic. Research Triangle Park has never had a venture fund return profits back to their investors. Yet Research Triangle Park is talking like this. Nashville, right? People talk about Nashville. Nashville doesn't have any economic indicators as strong as Sacramento, yet Nashville thinks that way. So I think part of our own story is, getting ourselves to believe in exactly who we are. And I think being in California, we're a little laid back. Being in a government economy, we're a little understated. We get a little bit more excited about politics than we do economic development and invention. We got to switch that out. But I'll give you an example. In a conversation I had with a venture fund who told us we didn't have the entrepreneurial talent between San Francisco and San Jose. This is LinkedIn data. So this is a good example of a narrative. There are 15,000 CEOs running emerging companies with less than 100 employees that either got their bachelor's degree from UC Davis or they got it from Sac State. 15,000. That's pretty impressive. So to me, I think we've just have to have a greater statement about ourselves. And that when you were a kid and you were coming out of college, everyone gave you a book, right? What you think is what you will become. I remember that book. It's probably 40 years old. What you think, you will become. And so I think a lot of this for our own narrative is what do we think of ourselves? And how do we raise our own standard about ourselves? We comb these entrepreneurial networks. I will tell you, we are already better than Denver. We're better than Salt Lake. We're better than Phoenix. And we're not that far from Seattle. And we're probably better than Portland. But I think when you look at that 489 venture funds in Silicon Valley with Stanford and Cal and all the IPOs that come out of that causes us to understate our potential. Austin's a great town. They're a little better than us, but not dramatically. And so when people ask me, where's the next great explosive company and technology coming from in the United States that people are going to be talking about? Absolutely, that can come out of Sacramento, and it should. And I think it will, as you look at this movement towards food and science and then the entrepreneurship. Now, I'll give you a great example. University of Washington has 50 people working in technology transfer and entrepreneurship. It's a fantastic school. I think UC Davis has 1.5 people working on that at UC Davis right now. All right. UC Davis spins out as many companies as the University of Washington. They have the exact same metrics. I mean, we don't even have a head of tech transfer. So if we get serious about it, intentional, put our head down, I mean, we're going to be incredibly explosive. And, it's amazing. I just saw a ping from Laura, Origin Materials, they're building $150 million plant in Canada. And they were a startup 4 or 5 years ago. So we have and I think what people need to learn, this is an incredible set of intensities and outcomes. I mean, even Zenify, which is a Salesforce company, we got the city to give them $100,000. We have 250 employees in the Thomas. These are amazing outcomes that I just don't see in too many places. And I think part of this narrative is not only measuring and telling our story, but helping people understand as we stand right now, we're a profound disruptive market for entrepreneurship. Right now, we already are. You've got the Food and Agricultural Center that developed with the Raley's. Shout out to John Sellup over in Woodland. You got the Cambridge Innovation Center. That's MIT and Harvard's commercialization partner in Boston. They're at Aggie Square. You have the Growth Factory, right? We've got the Schoolhouse Project in Folsom, right? We're going to open one in Roseville, right? We've got tons of innovation in Davis. And inside the city of Sacramento, we got the Carlson Center at Sac State, but we have the California Mobility Center. These are all post-2016. So there's a lot of momentum here. And I think a lot of it is about how we see ourselves going forward. That's our challenge. We need to see ourselves as big winners, big leaders in the market. And we need to get a little chip on our shoulder, that we're better than anybody else and everybody else. And then go out there, as you're saying, Monique, with the grit and the grind that we're going to prove that. I'm better than you, man, and I'm going to prove that right here in Sacramento, California.
Thank you so much, Barry. Always like just really, I think we just need to adopt that attitude and language. And I appreciate how well you are able to communicate that every time I speak with you. And I think you're right. I think we're going to move on now, Cameron, to Dawn. Is that who we have up next?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, so we have Dawn Strickland McGee. She is an administrator and lecturer with the UC Davis Student Startup Center. And she's working daily to develop entrepreneurial talent in this region and then connect that entrepreneurial talent to more talent with mentors, advisors, and other resources to support their growth. And she's done this at UC Davis, but she's done it for years before then, and looking forward to hearing what she has to say about the importance of people as part of our entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Thank you, Monique, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be here today to celebrate Global Entrepreneurship Week with you. I'm here to share my thoughts on people. I live my life at the intersection of people and entrepreneurship. I work for UC Davis's College of Engineering. I teach lean startup methods and mindsets and help to manage an entrepreneurship center called the Student Startup Center. At the Student Startup Center, we inspire students to become entrepreneurs and we support them as they build their ventures. Entrepreneurship is a hero's journey. It depends on the hero persevering even when things get really hard. The great thing about a strong ecosystem, the community that supports our entrepreneurs, is that it provides more opportunities for people to take the entrepreneur's journey. The stronger our ecosystem is, the stronger the supports that we build, the more opportunities we can create for people from all walks of life to solve the problems in their own environments. So who are these heroes? Every Friday afternoon at the Student Startup Center, we host a different entrepreneur to talk about their path of entrepreneurship. One thing that they have in common is that they have little in common. They come from all over the world. They come in all genders and colors and sizes. They could be anyone. What they do have in common is that they each noticed a problem and became obsessed with solving that problem. An entrepreneur's obsession with the problem is an optimist's obsession. The young people I work with have inherited a world full of problems and have every right to view the world through pessimist eyes. Among the other problems we're leaving for them to solve, we are leaving them with a trash planet. And yet they still see the world as full of opportunity. Yes, there are problems, but there are problems they know how to solve. Let me introduce you to some of these people. This is Chantal. She's solving the problem of single-use coffee cup waste. She's taking the guilt she feels when adding to our waste problem and converting it into a solution. This is Nia. Nia is making it easier to find your style with recycled clothes. She's discovered a trend in her age group and a missed opportunity to capitalize on. This is Jay. Jay sees a world in which your existing clothing is transformed into new fashions. 3 unique and personal approaches to solving one giant unwieldy problem. How might we develop lifestyles that consume resources in sustainable ways? Too big of a problem for any one person, but it becomes solvable when we each look for our part. Big problems can be solved that way, one individual's contribution at a time. When looking for my contribution to the ecosystem, I look back at my younger self and the supports I could have used when I was in college. I was full of energy, prepared to solve any problem set in front of me. I was impatient with the world's pace of change. As I set out to build businesses, I benefited from the experiences of others. The Student Startup Center institutionalizes connection, so it doesn't depend upon happenstance. We provide the space for students to build teams and community around solving problems. We help students develop their networks by connecting them with subject matter experts and mentors. This is Julian. Julian hypothesized that people feel guilty consuming meat and that guilt drives them to seek meat alternatives when food shopping. He set out to test his hypothesis at a local grocery store, intercepting customers on their way into the store. He quickly learned that people weren't interested in stopping to speak with a stranger, not until he began telling them he was a UC Davis student. I'm grateful for strangers' generosity with college students. We have a community built on this generosity. But what if we extended our kindness beyond college students? What if we each sought ways to be helpful in the ecosystem? You can come and support and be inspired by student entrepreneurs this Friday afternoon. We'll be gathering in the Student Startup Center to hear the latest student ventures. Today at the Student Startup Center, we're celebrating the news that one of last year's fledgling ventures, Seas, begins their Techstars Seattle journey today. We can't wait to see where this year's ventures will land. I'll leave you with 3 challenges we pose to our students. Create your own job, build something new, make the world better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for sharing the work that you're doing. And having been to the Student Startup Center and seen it in action, it's just an awesome and inspiring place to be with young people who are truly looking to solve the world's biggest problems. So thank you for all the work that you do there. I think up next we have Laura Good, who is the co-founder of Startup Sac and also known as the den mother of founders in the Sacramento region. Laura has been a boots on the ground ecosystem builder for well over a decade and has either onboarded, run, or supported pretty much every entrepreneurial program in this community, from startup weekends and startup grind to 1 million cups to startup happy hour, workshops, pitch competitions, showcases, you name it, she's had her fingers on it. And there is no better person to talk about programs in this region. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you for that introduction, Monique. Recently, someone called me the godmother, and I'm trying to decide if I like godmother better than den mother. So we'll see. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. I should have got some of those students at the Student Startup Center to help me make my presentation prettier, but we'll go with what I've got here. So. All right, so as Monique mentioned, I'm with Startup Sac, and Startup Sac's been around for about 5 years. We work with startups in the greater Sacramento region, helping them to be successful. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what we do because I want to paint a larger picture, tell you about what's going on. Monique already talked about me, so I'm going to go ahead and skip that slide, except there's the part of contact me at laura@startupsac.org, and I'm always happy to talk to people in the community. All right, so some of you may have seen the Sacramento Startup and Innovation Ecosystem Diagram, and my business partner at Startup Sac, Jeff Bennett, created this, and it highlights a lot of what we are going to talk about today during my talk, the programs that are available in the Sacramento region for entrepreneurs. There's a pretty cool picture of that. So when we talk about programs in relation to the E3 scorecard, we talk about on-ramps and pathways, which are basically programs and places that allow entrepreneurs and business owners to launch, grow, and scale their companies. So that's what we're going to take a look at right now, is what are some of those things? And as a caveat, I'm not talking about every program that's available. I've highlighted a few, and there are a lot more, and there are also a lot more that we need to build as well. So one of the things that the E3 scorecard looks for, or one of the things that Forward Cities recommends, is accessible business skills trainings and technical assistant programs. And keep in mind, there's sort of two different kinds of people who need help that we're talking about here. One are the people who are looking to build what I'll call scalable startups, a lot of them tech startups. And then the other are entrepreneurs who want to build businesses, whether it's a lifestyle business or something that they really want to scale as well. And some of their needs differ in terms of the type of education they need, but there's also a lot of intersection there. So there's a couple of great programs that the Carlson Center has that I think are really invaluable for people who are starting new businesses, especially the entrepreneurship toolkit. I think is especially helpful for people who are building companies that might look at having investment capital at some time in the future. And then their Lean Innovator series really helps you go from, let's say, 0 to 25 miles per hour with your startup. So looking at a lot of the things that entrepreneurs forget about. But then there's also a resource called the Small Business Development Center, also called the SBDC, that actually you fund with your tax dollars, that can help every entrepreneur, whether you want to open a restaurant, a retail clothing store, an online shopping business. They have both classes and advisors who can help you with that. And two other organizations that provide similar resources are SCORE, which is, I'll say, staffed by volunteer, typically retired business people who learned a lot on their way through growing their businesses. And then the Women's Business Center, which focuses on a lot of the challenges that women have. So there's a lot of other programs, but there's also room for a lot more programs in this area. So another area that we need to have programs in is one articulated and active Main Street business recovery and resilience strategy. And again, SBA and SBDC really stand out there. In the state of California, we have the California Office of the Small Business Advocate, which has programs that can help. And then at a more local level, the Sacramento COVID Recovery Plan is there. Are we reaching everyone with these programs? Probably not. There's a lot of room to grow there. But I think one of the problems is people just don't know that some of these programs exist. So getting that word out is helpful. Then another area is programs for minority and women-owned business enterprises. And we've got a couple good examples here, but again, love to see more programs. Hacker Lab has a program called Innovators, which is a program for women who want to have their own businesses, and most of them are coming from a lower income situation. It's a great program. I think they're on their second or third cohort of that program. The Women's Business Center, which I mentioned before. Also, Northern California SBDC has the Inclusivity Project, which has both some great programs to attend. In fact, there was just one on equity and inclusion, like in funding, with a specific emphasis on Black founders. And then a program you might not know about, the Franklin Neighborhood Development Corporation. They train people how to have food businesses. What's different about what they do is they teach it in Spanish. So the whole program is in Spanish, and they have some other programs as well. So the next area is accessible accelerators and incubators for multiple sectors. So I've highlighted a few here, kind of what we think of as more traditional accelerators and incubators when we think about startups are the Growth Factory, which Monique was instrumental in getting that started, and the Founder Institute. Both of those work with primarily scalable tech startups, helping them to scale up their businesses. There's also the Sacramento Entrepreneurship Academy, which is probably the oldest entrepreneurship program in the greater Sacramento region. I think it's in like its 25th or 26th year, but they have a program that teaches you what entrepreneurship is all about, whether you're a student or you've retired and want to, for your second wind, you want to start a new business. So that's starting up in early 2022. There's also programs like Startup Sac, Clean Start, and Ag Start that work with entrepreneurs more on an ad hoc basis, more probably like personalized incubator, if you will, meeting you where you need to be. And then the Women Business Center has a program called Startup to Success. It's a startup generator. I believe it is a 10-week program. And if you want to start a business, you can join that program and learn a lot about what you need to do to start your own business. And then the last one I have on here is the Alchemist Micro Enterprise Academy. That is another program that teaches people who want to have food businesses. That one's in English, and they work with Franklin quite a bit. They work together on that. So there's a variety of programs there to look at. Then another area is free low-cost startup and/or entrepreneurial mindset workshop. Again, the Lean Innovator series, I think, helps you with entrepreneurial mindset. Startups SAC office hours is a monthly seminar teaching you on something that's important for a founder to know. We have Startup Happy Hour, which happens every month, and an experienced startup founder shares their story with you, and you can learn through them telling about their journey. And then one of my favorite programs in Sacramento that I wish more people knew about is called 1 Million Cups. And 1 Million Cups meets every week, so there's plenty of opportunity to join. It meets on Wednesday mornings right now on Zoom, and 2 entrepreneurs share their story and ask you for feedback. So this is primarily early stage businesses, say no more than 5 years old, but they do a short presentation, and then they hear from the audience, which usually is 70% or better other entrepreneurs. They ask some questions, they give them feedback on how they can improve. And we have, from scalable startups to someone who's opening a restaurant, people who have consulting businesses, just about any type of business is welcome at 1 Million Cups. So I hope for those of you who don't know about it, that you'll join us either to present your company or to hear about the other companies in the community and give your feedback. So real quickly, I'll talk about places as well, because places are also important. There's a lot of co-working spaces and some maker spaces in Sacramento. These are where people gather, and also pre-COVID, where a lot of our events took place. So there's a list of those there. You can find them on the startup ecosystem diagram. One thing that we really need is more accessible and inclusive public/free innovation workspaces. So this is definitely something missing. The Carlson Center, anybody's welcome to go hang out at the Carlson Center at Sac State. You don't need to be a student to do that. They have office hours, they have programs, so check that out. Public libraries are a place where you can go use the computers and things like that, but it doesn't necessarily have a program. But a lot of the co-working spaces in town have free co-working days on a regular basis, like once a month. So if you can't afford a co-working space, you might want to go check them out on those days. And then Barry already spoke about some of the innovation hubs that are already here in Sacramento and some that are coming. So I won't spend a lot of time on that. So with this presentation, 2 things to consider. First, this presentation was not a complete list of the available resources. So check out the Startup Sac ecosystem diagram. It's interactive. Also, if you know about a program that isn't included on that diagram, please reach out to me, Laura at startupsac.org or Jeff at startupsac.org, and let us know about that program. And then also, yes, we have a lot of programs going on, but there is a great need to make and create more programs and places that are accessible and inclusive for all entrepreneurs. So So keep that in mind. And I will stop sharing my screen. I hope I didn't go over time.
You're great, Laura. Thank you so much. And as you did such a great job tying all of that to the E3 framework. It got me thinking about, like, as we look back at the narratives and the people, and you addressed it with the programs, is, from a narrative standpoint, how do we each see ourselves in that narrative, and how do we make sure everyone can see themselves in the narratives that we're telling, right? How do we design that narrative together? And then from the people standpoint, Dawn did such a great job explaining, the work with the students. I think some other areas are around, which I know you and the Carlson Center do work with Mentor Sacramento, but how do we engage, a more diverse set of mentors too, right? Like, how do we engage not just more, diverse entrepreneurs, but the mentors and funders, how do we build networks that are more diverse in that area? And then with the programs, you just touched on it, as we need to build more, kind of inclusive and accessible programs. And I think along those lines, it's, those are things that, we have a lot of really great existing resources, so we can look at how do we extend those into communities that have lacked access in the past, but also how do we design, or how do we help design, programs that speak to the communities for which, they're serving. So thank you for all of that. Really appreciate it. And now, darn it, guys, sorry. I'm in the conference room with the light keeps going off, and I will tell you that, and then the fire alarm went off, and I'm like, okay, great. This is not my day here. So we are gonna take this home with the absolutely amazing Amanda Blackwood. She is president and CEO of the Sac Metro Chamber, and I can't think of anyone better to speak about networks. Her ability to work across sectors, public, private, nonprofit, and communities, across the Sacramento region is impressive. And those who know her have seen her roll up her sleeves to tackle the very difficult work of reconstructing old networks that were not as diverse, equitable, or inclusive, and begin to build new networks that are much more representative of the communities that they serve. So I am excited that she is joining us today. Thank you for being here. And then I'll pass it over to you.
Hello, well, thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here at the end. So you've had this amazing day of hearing all of this incredible information, and I'm sure you are a bit overwhelmed with everything you've heard. So my goal here today in my last kind of 6 minutes is to help you know how to kind of put that into action within this concept of networks. So what you heard today is you've got amazing people back here that have your back. So at the very, very minimum, right, the folks that you met today, the folks you heard from today, the ones that said, here's my email, reach out, do that. They mean that. So, right, one of the easy things you can do right now is you've invested this entire day in your growth mindset, your opening doors, thinking about the vision that you want to accomplish. And these people right here are here for you. So I want you to know it's not that scary, right? You can always reach out. I'll give you a little bit of a story. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in the Midwest, and Sacramento can be a big town in some ways and a small town in some ways. And so I came in with my small business and my ideas and everything I wanted to do, and started as simple as, well, who else is doing what I want to do? And let me know those people. So I'm going to give you this philosophical belief that I unequivocally believe to be true. You will become the 5 people you hang out with the most. And in your entrepreneurial journey, if you are surrounded by folks that are dreaming big dreams, right, as Barry said, seeing the future, right now it's just an idea on a piece of paper, but damn it, you're going to be the global powerhouse leader of. If you are surrounded by those kinds of people, it's going to change how you think, and it's going to change the decisions you make, and it's going to change what you believe is possible. So I strongly encourage you, as you're thinking about your network of people right now, who's feeding you that food that you need to keep the energy and to keep the focus and to take that next step? And who are those voices in your world that are telling you, what are you trying to do? You're never going to become anything. That's never going to work out. Cut it off, right? You're a human being with limited time, and you're going to choose to put that time and invest it in those that are going to return to you, that are going to help you believe even more strongly what you're capable of, that are going to open those doors, that are going to show you the path, because the path is there. Laura just gave you like 75 programs right now, right, that you can get engaged in. So the path is there, but the inputs that you get, right, that's going to play a huge part in dictating your trajectory of what you're capable of. So the simplest way, I want you to lean into the people that you met today, that you heard from today, to think about those people in your life that are bringing you energy, that are making you stronger, and spend more time with those people. And if there's some drama mama that's leading you behind and dragging you down, peace. You got one life, you got one journey, right? Have it be in alignment with your dreams. In a more practical sense on networks, right? The Metro Chamber, which is my great privilege. I have been president and CEO for the last 4 years. We represent 6 counties of the region, 22 cities. So lean into us. Pick up the phone, make a phone call, look at the website, metrochamber.org, reach out, send a note. We've got folks on staff that their only job is to help you navigate this journey at no cost to you. So navigate it your own, explore all the things that you said, but you can also just pick up a phone, call a hotline, shoot an email. metrochamber.org will help guide you through, but other chambers as well. So know in your community, there is probably a chamber that represents your geography, and there's probably a chamber that represents your particular niche, be it as a specific type of business, be it the Black Chamber, Hispanic Chamber, Asian Chamber, all have resources in language available to you. There is a community within Sacramento called the SAC IEDC, which is a group of PBIDs, chambers, and other business groups that all came together to say, we're not fighting with each other, right? We're fighting for you. So let's align resources and let's have a shared narrative, a shared set of standards, a shared set of programs that we can make available. So reach out, right, to a chamber, even if it's just an idea. Right. So we have right now we run the Small Business Development Center. We'll do that through the end of the year. We're also launching our own, the Metro Business Center, which will allow us more flexibility. Love our grant funding, but it can be a little prescriptive. So we really want to be able to meet the needs of our community in a very inclusive way. And there are counselors, they are there to guide you through. And again, no cost to you at all. Even if you just want a phone call for somebody to reinforce that you do have a good idea and there are legs there. That could be the power of that phone call. That could be the one little boost that you need, all the way through business plans, access to capital, different types of capital, SBA funding. California Capital is an amazing resource. They will be hosting the SBDC moving forward. So right, there are micro grants. Maybe you only need $500. Maybe you need $5 million, right? All of that is available to you in this region through networks. And it could be as simple as reach out to what Laura just sent you, email us, check us out on the website, right? We're all just here to support your growth. I will share as a small business owner myself, and having done several years with a 2-week-old baby and a 2-year-old, and I'm just going to figure it out. I know what that is to be chief idea officer and marketing and insurance and finance. And it can be really, really overwhelming, and you don't have to do that alone, but it's all going to be right? That help is going to be when you expand those networks, you set up those coffees, you make that ask. If someone says they're here to help you, they're here to help you. And if they're not, you move on, right? But no, phrase I will use, don't be afraid to lose what you don't have now, right? You don't have that $50 million investor. You don't have that amazing technical plan, but you could, right? So what do you make the phone call, right? Do the outreach, tweet somebody who's doing something that you think is doing something amazing. LinkedIn, reach out. I will guarantee you my success has been built from not being afraid to say that I don't know, not being intimidated about somebody telling me no. I know people all the time. I don't know them now. So you never know, who calls you back. And now, Sacramento fun fact, as Laura was talking about the California Office of the Small Business Advocate, that was Isabel Guzman. That's somebody we know. That's a gal that was in our community that we could call, that we could text, that we could have coffee with. She's now the head of the SBA, right, at the Biden administration. So no, you've got this really special access to people that are moving up the halls of power, people that are in elected office, people that are making big, big, big decisions because you happen to be in the capital of California. And I knew Isabel because I saw her speak. I LinkedIn stalked her. I sent her an email. What can I buy you a cup of coffee? And then 3 years later, girlfriend is leading the SBA at the nation's capital. So I really want you to know you can reach out. You can utilize all of these organizations and all of these associations and everybody that's here for you. Think about who is giving you input. Think about the people you want to be around. Think about when you have big ideas, who is that place you go to that gives you that boost of energy? But it could be as simple as you saw something today that inspired you and you want to have another conversation about that. A lot can happen over a Cosmo or a cup of coffee, right? That a whole day meeting may not even get you. So I really, really encourage you, reach out, believe in it, and know that you have incredible value as you are right now. You may go to a thing and you see somebody with this glossy business plan and all this, and you're going to think, oh, I'm so far from being able to do that. I need to get all my ducks in a row before. It's not about that, right? It's about reach out now, reach out where you are right now and start to cultivate those folks around you that are going to give you the help that you need now. It doesn't have to be perfect to launch, right? It could just be an idea. And that's okay. And maybe you're going to feed that idea slowly over the next 3 years. But you've done everything to line yourself up. So the second that you decide, I'm going to go for it, it's going to be the real deal for me, right? You've already laid the foundation. You already have those relationships. You've already talked to bankers. You already understand how it all works. No one can ever take information and experience away from you. So everything that you learn is just going to be one more little tool in the toolkit, right? That's going to help you make the next right decision. The very last thing I'm going to leave you with is advocacy. And I cannot emphasize how critically important it is and how critically difficult it is when you're trying to run your business, right? You don't think of writing letters to electeds and calling in and doing this and that. But I'm telling you, you work with the chamber, we will help you. You can do it on your own as well. Your elected officials need to know that you're there. They need to know how many of you there are. They need to know how powerful you are. They need to absolutely understand entrepreneurship is economic development. They need to absolutely understand that inclusive economic development is not only morally imperative, but economically imperative. Your time is now to let your voice be heard. And I'll tell you that as somebody who fights for money, we were able to get 50 million, CARE Sacramento. We were able to just get 25 million for business through the county act. They don't know that was not an easy ask, right? That takes letters and voices and phone calls and emails, and your electeds really do need to know that you're here, that you're a powerhouse, that you are representative of this incredible community with, unleashed potential. And you need the resources you need to be successful, and you need legislation that's going to be helpful to you, and you need that door to be open, because it's hard enough getting your concept off the ground without unexpected fees, this, that, things coming at you. And particularly for those of you that need support in language. No shade to anybody, but it always comes as an afterthought. We're going to launch this micro grant. Oh, and then we're going to provide in language, resources 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. Well, first come, first serve. Well, that doesn't seem very fair to me at all. So do know that if you need those resources specific to your circumstance, you tell your electeds it's important. Tell them that you need it. Voice it with chambers. We can elevate that voice, and that is what allows us to fight for these resources. County wasn't going to do anything for small business. So no, right? That was just going to pass on consent and all be over, and we all move on with our lives. So getting you the resources you need, getting you the environment you need is a fight, and we need you in the trenches with us so that we can fight that fight together. So I will just end on, know this. You have everything you need right now to be successful. You are perfect and incredible as you are right now. You're only going to grow. You're only going to learn more. You're only going to lean in more, but you are capable of achieving anything that you believe is possible. All of us have your back. All of us are going to be here along your journey. So have today be the day that you do something your tomorrow self is going to thank you for. Could be something big, could be something little, but each step in the right direction is going to build momentum to you achieving your dreams. And it is absolutely possible for you.
Love it.
Well, I knew we gave it to the right person to take us home. Thank you. Thank you for that, Amanda. That was amazing. And I believe, Cameron, I'm handing it back over to you.
Awesome. Well, we are at the close of our session here tonight. So wanted to thank all of our amazing speakers, from starting with Faye, talking about forward cities in the E3 framework, which we are looking forward to continue putting to the ground here in Sacramento, to all of our lightning talks. So thank you, Monique, for facilitating the lightning talk conversations, Barry Broom for talking about the narratives aspect, Don McGee to talk about our people, Laura Good to talk about programs, and Amanda to close us out and talking about networks. So we're really excited about what's happening in the Sacramento entrepreneurial ecosystem. I really appreciate all of you being here and engaging Global Entrepreneurship Week Sacramento. Today is only day 2 or day 1 of 5. So I just shared in the chat is day 2. So we'd love for you to plug in. Tomorrow, I think we have close to 6 events, so there's a lot of opportunity to plug in, and the time is now if you want to be an entrepreneur or if you want to get into the ecosystem building, because Sacramento is about to take off, and a lot of that is because of the people who were speaking here today and for all of you taking the risk to be entrepreneurs. So we appreciate you being here in the space, and we look forward to seeing you and continuing to build the Sacramento entrepreneurial ecosystem, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 2 of Global Entrepreneurship Week. So thank you all, and we'll have a good one and see you soon. Bye-bye.